So we are considering the concept of cattle reproductive efficiency, and we want to see how we can apply this in Nigeria. That is our major focus today. We have already discussed about cattle reproductive efficiency before now, but how can we apply that concept in Nigeria? That is what we are actually considering today. So after my profile, we are going to go into introduction, reproduction cycle. So we also compare the actual versus expected. So that is actual, what is obtainable worldwide, and what do we have actually in Nigeria. That's the actual. Then the expected is what is obtainable worldwide. Then we try to look at this timetable we can follow in Nigeria, and from that timetable, we as an organization, that is EMMSAR Veterinary Medical Diagnostic Services, we are trying to develop a simple app, like a software that you can use to monitor this timetable, and we consider the key takeaways, and after that we have question and answer. Just a brief introduction about me as a presenter of this seminar. So like I said before, this is actually the second part of this reproductive efficiency. The first part explained what the reproductive efficiency concept actually is. We were able to look at some basics, and then we define some terms. And in the link that I sent earlier, you can find the detail of that there. Today, so we're going to the second part, and like I said, we want to see what is obtainable in Nigeria, what is obtainable worldwide, and then how can we manage in order for us to participate and join from the benefits of reproductive efficiency. So that's what we are considering today. So the application of it in Nigeria is what we are considering today. So first of all, let's look at reproduction cycle. And when we talk about reproduction cycle, there are, let me say, we have like 5 important steps or stages when we talk about reproduction cycle. Number 1 is the estrous cycle. Number 2 is breeding, which we are going to explain each of these later, especially the estrous cycle and breeding. Especially the estrous cycle. So breeding can either be natural mating or can be artificial insemination, either of the two. Gestation period, that is the period of pregnancy. Calving, that is when they give birth. And the resumption of ovarian activity after the cow has given birth. When will the ovary begin functioning again so that the animal can come back to eat, and then we'll come back to estrous cycle? So we will be looking at this in detail in this presentation. Estrous cycle. So when we talk about estrous cycle, just like we see in that graph or the pictures the side of the slide, is just from estrous to another estrous. So that's the cycle. The animal cycles from estrous to another estrus. Estrus is like the heat. So from heat to another heat. And it has been so many experiments has been conducted, and it has been found out that it's about 21 days that it takes every cow to move from one estrus to another estrus. And good enough, same thing happened to the Nigerian cows. It's just 21 days. So when we talk about estrus cycle, there are two main important division, which is also found in the slide that we have in this that we have just sent in. That is the follicular phase and the luteal phase. So the follicular phase is just about 3 days, and during that time we expect that there won't be so much perceptible level of progesterone. But on the other hand, luteal phase, which is actually that takes the larger portion, that is when we have progesterone production, as it has been demonstrated in that graph. Now, I want us to keep this in mind, this progesterone production, because we are going to eventually discuss it later on in this presentation. So remember, the larger portion is when we have progesterone being produced, and that is the luteal phase. In the follicular phase, progesterone is in the body, but it is not so much to the extent that it will be able to easily be picked up by a test kit that we are trying to introduce. So just bear that in mind so that you follow it. So the follicular phase, I've already written there, day 1, day 20, and day 21, which we actually call day 0. And the reason why we call it day 0 is because that is the day that the animal show its signs. For those that know how to observe its sign. So that is day 21, or what we call day 0, when the animal shows each sign. So we want to talk about it and breeding, and like I said, breeding can either be natural mating, or we can actually go for artificial insemination. So let's just quickly look at this, because this part is like let me say the brain behind the successful performance of your animal when it comes to reproduction, either for artificial insemination or natural mating. When natural mating, when you have your male and female together, may not be a big issue, but when they are separated, this is very important. And especially when you are using combination of natural mating and artificial insemination, you may want to pay attention to this particular slide, because it actually spells out how you can benefit maximally from this reproductive efficiency that we are talking about. Now, let's go. It involves a little calculation, and we try to do it together. Number one is standing heat. It takes less than 12 hours. Well, some people have said 12 hours, some people have said 11, some have even said 9 hours. That's when you're going to be able to see the sign, or what we call standing heat, that the animal is going to show signs of heat. So let's assume we have 11 hours or 10 hours on the average. Okay, so ovulation occurs about 28 hours after the start of it, which means that if you are going to remove 11 hours, which is when the period of it, if you remove it from this 28 hours, we are going to be having something around 16 to 17 hours left for the ovulation, after the ovulation has taken place. So we have ovulation, we are called. So if you remove 12 hours or 11 hours of the period of standing it is going to be 12 hours. So, and they said 28 after the standing heat. So if you remove the period of standing heat from this 28, so we are going to be having about 16 or 17 hours left. Now within that 16 and 17 hours, we have the fertility lifespan of an egg that is released to be just 12 hours. That is where many people find it difficult to understand why they have failed artificial insemination or they have failed breeding. Now, if we just have the fertility life of an egg to be just 12 hours, that means if the sperm is not available as at the time the egg is being released, the likelihood that the egg is going to be eventually fertilized is becoming slimmer. Because as we are going to see, sperm also needs what we call capacitation before it can fertilize, and that also takes another 6 hours. I just want us to follow the calculation. That's the reason why it is actually expected that sperm should be available, in short, should have been able to undergo what is called capacitation and be ready for fertilization before the egg is released. That should be our target. So let's calculate the hours and make sure that before the egg is released, the animal has sperm inside the female reproductive tract, and that should be our target. That should be our goal. That's the reason. That's the only way we can have higher rate of higher conception rate when we use either natural mating or we use artificial insemination. So this part is very important. And remember, there are some animals that you may miss their standing heat, because say for example, what if the animal comes on heat around 7:30 at night? You have already gone home, and about 11 hours, say by 6:30 a.m. the animal has already come off heat. How are you going to detect that animal? That means you have missed that animal, and you are going to wait for another 21 days before you can see any sign of standing heat. That is the reason why we may not be maximally benefiting from the reproduction, and that is more reason why we are looking at how to apply this reproductive efficiency in Nigeria. So we talk about breeding, natural mating, artificial insemination. Well, there are a lot of advantages with natural mating and a lot of disadvantages. There are a lot of advantages of artificial insemination, and there are also a lot of disadvantages. So, if an artificial insemination is just a via cost about 1,000 to 3,005 depending on the species and the fact that if it is a sexed one or not sexed one, and you are still making a mistake in not getting it right just because of the fact that you have not been able to do your timetable right to be able to know, okay, this is the right time, either you are using Estrous synchronization or not. It's going to be a complete waste of money, because we did a survey recently. Some people said that they do it 3 times. Some people said they do it 5 times before they will eventually be able to have a pregnancy or conception. Then I asked myself, if it costs, let me even assume it costs 1,000 naira, and you have to do it 3 times, that's 3,000 naira. That's number one loss. Number two loss is that you are going to have to do 21 plus another 21 plus another 21, which makes about 63 days that have been wasted in the life of that cattle. And that is also a big loss. And that's the reason why we're actually thinking of how can we maximize what we have, so that we are not just going to be wasting the reproductive life of our animals. And that is the reason why we are looking at this reproductive efficiency. So in either natural mating or artificial insemination, we have to ensure that our reproduction is actually very efficient. Let's look at gestation periods and calving. So we're just going to touch this one briefly. The picture in this slide will be able to give you a better understanding of what we are discussing. Actually, gestation period is about on the average of 283 and 9 months, just like human beings. So that is what we have in cow, and that is one of the reasons why the reproductive efficiency now becomes more necessary, because that means if we are not efficient in our reproduction, we may have to be giving birth to, our animal giving birth to just one calf in a whole probably 2-3 years, 2-3 years interval. So that's not efficient. And that's the reason why we have to consider it, because it's becoming a very important factor now. So various factors actually determine gestation period, and gestation period eventually culminates in calving, which is giving birth, as it has been said in this slide. So why do we need to talk about resumption of ovarian activities after an animal has given birth? So many people think cattle, since they have 9 months of gestational period, then they are going to have just exactly like human being, that before they even resume ovarian activity is going to take probably a month or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. It has been usually said that when a female is given is breastfeeding, that the likelihood of coming to pregnancy is slim. Well, not like it is nil, so that you'll be able to get me right. It's just slim. There is still possibility of coming to pregnancy. So that is actually the way it is also applicable to cows. When they give birth, it is believed that they resume ovarian activities. Well, different animal with different characteristics, between 16 to 34 days. On the average, it is actually advisable that they should be bred again at about 85 days after they have given birth, because we may want to skip probably the first ovarian cycle to allow the animal to have a resumption. To have all the whole pregnancy recovery. But immediately after that, we should start planning to breed the animal again, because if we don't, that means we are going to be wasting a lot of time. It's not because the animal is not capable, but it's because we are either unaware, or we are the one that is underutilizing the capability of the animal. So we should be able to breed the cow 85 days after the animal has given birth. Let me say on the average, so it's between 82 and 90. So depending on so on the average of 85 days. So that is one of those things that we should also consider in order for us to be able to, because they will have resumed ovarian activities. So that means they can come on it around even from some immediately about 13 days afterwards, some may take up to 64 days, a different factor with different animals, but it is expected that even if you allow them to go with the first stage, probably if they come on heat around the day 64, and you may allow a pass, and then the second heat, you should be able to breed them, which is around that 82 to 90 days on the average of 85. Yeah, this slide, like I said, it's very important, really important in this consideration. I may not be able to go through it one after the other, but the good news is that there are some things that we have in common, even with that our local breed have in common with what is actually obtainable across the world. So this is a very good advantage that we should make good use of. But it took me a lot of reading to be able to find this out in comparison, trying to compare what the standard of the exotic breeds are and what we have in our local breed. And this table, like I said, is very important. We may need to really study it in order to be able to maximize the opportunity that our even local breed can give unto us that we have not actually been using. And then some of the disadvantage that our local breed may present that we can now turn to be an advantage. This can be well spelled out in this because we're trying to compare what the standard is and what is actually obtainable. Take for example, number of service per conception. We have ones in exotic breed. For most, well, some also do two, but for most that have started using technology, they do one. And then in Nigeria, we have three. Gestation period is about the same for both. And then we have calving to eat interval. You can see the gap that is there. Conception rate, you can see the gap. Calving to conception interval, you can see the gap. Making cycle, you can see the gap. There are a lot of things that we have very wide gap, and that is the reason why like FAO has said that by 2050 we may be having dearth of both meat and beef production in Nigeria, and to be able to compensate and prevent that, we may need to consider this concept of reproductive efficiency and apply the same in Nigeria. Yeah, so this is a new technology we are introducing to Nigeria. We call it P4 Gold, and some of those things that it can do is already well spelled out there. And it's just to be able to have to be able to contribute to the reproductive efficiency of cows in Nigeria. So it can prevent mistime insemination, it can prevent insemination of an already pregnant cow, it can prevent a lot of wastages can be prevented with this technology. And heat detection when you're supposed to inseminate, for you to be able to detect animal that is not cycling, just there eating your food but not cycling, to be able to detect the animal that has what we call persistent corpus luteum, that will not make the animal to be pregnant no matter the number of times that you inseminate or you allow the animal to mate. Some of those things can be easily detected with this new technology, and we are actually bringing it into the country, although currently we are trying to run a project on it to know its suitability and adaptability in the country. And we are planning to make it even commercially available for people to use, so that we can make and can improve on the reproduction of our cows and be able to have better number of animals. That's not the only thing. Even our milk production can be improved if we can be consistent with our reproductive efficiency. So in the long run, we have both more animals and then more milk. In that way, we can then avert the prediction of FAO that by 2050 there's going to be insufficiency of meat and beef production in Nigeria. As we round up the training, the time is already gone. So what are the key takeaways? Number one is that you should apply the advice program on your farm in order to be able to ensure that your cows are calving every year. I've already given us the timetable, so we can use that timetable to ensure that our cows are calving every year. That's number one. Number two is that the annual calving is also very crucial for increased milk production. As you can see in this the picture on this slide, the more your animal come, the earlier the animal give birth, the higher your milk production. So that means the first about 80 to 90 days of after calving, there's a very high milk production of animal that declines with time, and by the time it is almost 200 and probably 250 or 215, I'm not too sure, then there is going to be a decline in the milk production, and it will not even be profitable for you to be feeding that animal. But the good part of it is that if you have done the timetable according to, if you operate according to the timetable, you realize that by the time the milk is declining, you already have a baby that is on its way. In the next 1 or 2 months, then the baby arrives and the milk surge again. Now you have both the baby and the milk surge. So it is actually very important for us to apply this reproductive efficiency. If we understand the concept fully and we follow the timetable, and probably by the time we also introduce the technology that we want to use to be able to help people to monitor this reproductive efficiency in Nigeria, and we introduce it to farmers and they start using it, then you will appreciate it more, because now you can see that your animal is giving you more babies and then you are also having more milk, which is actually a good thing. So that's number 2. Then try to detect non-cycling cow in order to be able to reduce your cost, because non-cycling cow, you think that you have inseminated or you have allowed it to go for mating and then you have started feeding them with special feed for pregnant animals, just to realize that the animal is not cycling and it's complete waste of time. Even the ones that have persistent corpus luteum, you just keep inseminating or natural mating and giving them special feed because you are of the opinion that they are already pregnant, whereas the animal is having persistent corpus luteum and it cannot just get pregnant. All of those wastage will be reduced if we employ this the concept of reproductive efficiency. And lastly, PeopleGo comes with many benefits, especially to reduce cost of AI and wastage of time and resources. So if we can employ it in our farm, it's going to help us a lot to ensure reproductive efficiency, boost our reproductive performance, and increase our productivity and profitability in our farm. Well, thank you very much for listening. It's time for question and answer. So please, if you have any question, this is time for you to ask so that we can give answer as much as possible to your questions. Thank you.